It's great to see you again.
Good to see you.
And I know when we had initially met, we talked about your concerns, and I have an idea of what your concerns are, but I'd love to hear from you again. When you look in the mirror, or when you look at the photos of yourself up there, what is it that you notice that you wish to address?
I mean, obviously, as I'm getting older, my neck is slowly sagging lower and lower, but my chin has always been a concern of mine, and just with my profile, it being set farther back than the rest of my face, and then just all this fun extra skin down here.
And you know, we had talked about why that happens, and part of it is stuff that occurs over time, but also part of it is hereditary. So I've seen patients who are young like you who start developing a looseness of the skin in the neck area here, a little bit of fullness underneath the chin in this area here, and a loss of definition of the jawline in that area there. And as you had said, one of the other things that you noticed and that we see in the photograph is the chin is just a little set back relative to the lips and the nose. And so we talked about various things that we can do to address this area, and we'll kind of chat about the stepwise approach that we'll do surgically to help address that. So the procedure that we're going to do for you is a combination of a chin implant plus what we call a neck lift, and I'll share with you how that's done. So the first thing we do is we make an incision, a small incision underneath the chin in this area here. Through this incision, I can go underneath the skin in this area here. Now, some people think it's as simple as just doing a little bit of liposuction. And indeed, if you have fat between the skin and a muscle that's in the neck, that what's called the platysma muscle, if there's fat between the skin and that muscle, that's the fat we liposuction. I suspect you don't have very much fat in that area because I can see the muscle band here pretty clearly, which tells me that there's not a lot of fat covering that muscle and hiding it from us. So although liposuction is something I will do if needed, I don't know if we need to do a whole lot of liposuctioning for you. But what I will then do is I'll take a peek under the platysma muscle here and under the platysma muscle here. But because what I suspect you do have is some hereditary fat between my fingers here, deep to that muscle. Now that fat that's deep to the platysma muscle, you can't liposuction. You can't liposuction that deep fat in that area. But what we do is through the small incision underneath the chin is we can cut out that fat in that area so that we can get as sharp a neckline as possible. The other thing that we'll do is we'll trim the laxity of the platysma muscle here, trim it here, and we'll stitch it together to further accentuate the neckline. Now, in some instances, that's all we need to do for patients, and we just close this incision and the skin heals really nicely and they get a sharp neckline. What dictates whether or not we can get away with that small incision here alone is the quality of the skin. If the skin has really good collagen to it, if it has great qualities with respect to the collagen, then when we close it here and we put a compression dressing on, the skin conforms really nicely. But when we have this hereditary, by the way, it's a hereditary loss of collagen in this area here, we go from the analogy, which may not be a great analogy, is from a grape to a raisin. Now we have all this lax skin that we have to deal with, and we can't just deal with it through this incision here. So the next step in a neck lift, and I'll come over to the other side so I can show you both, is we're going to make incisions that hide really nicely around the ear. So we make it first at the earlobe, behind the ear, and along the hairline. If we're doing a true neck lift, we go underneath the skin in this area here. Now remember we talked about this platysma muscle here. Well, it's not just a band of muscle here, but it's rather a sheet of muscle that comes all the way back here and up here. What we do with that muscle is we go under that muscle. So we do now what's called a deep plane neck lift, or a deep plane lower face of neck lift. And we go under the muscle until we get to about here. When we get to about here, we get this really good movement of the muscle, and it's the muscle layer that we then reposition like this to give you that nice jawline here. And now you can see all that extra skin that we trim through the incision that's behind the ear. Now, one thing I want to call out for you is this. When I do this, take a look at what happens to the skin in front of the ear. So although we're going to do what's specifically called a neck lift, we will make an incision that hides within the earlobe face crease here, behind this cartilage here, in the crease between the earlobe or the ear and the face, and into the hairline. Why? Because when I do this, we can't just leave the skin like that. What we're gonna do is this as well. So although it's kind of like a lower facelift neck lift with respect to the incision, the primary focus is going to be here, but the added benefit you're gonna get is further improvement in this area because you're gonna get a little bit of a lift in that regard as well. So traditionally when we say neck lift, people think it's just an incision behind the ear, but because of the skin laxity, when we do this, we already know we're gonna need to hide the incisions really nicely here. And by the way, once we're done with the surgery and once you've healed completely, you'll be able to wear your hair in a ponytail and no one will see any of those incisions because they hide so nicely within the natural creases of the ear cartilage and behind this ear cartilage here. Now the really cool thing is through this incision, as we're doing the work underneath here, we can place the chin implant for you. Okay. It's a very straightforward thing. It's kind of like we're already there. This incision is already made. It's a very simple placement of the chin implant here. The chin implant comes in 4 different sizes: small, medium, large, extra large, and we actually have sizers so that we can place them at the same time so we can see how the neck looks at the same time as the jawline and the chin projection. I can tell you based on my experience that a small is going to be too small, an extra large, maybe a little too large. You're probably somewhere between a medium and a large. Okay. Yeah. And then the implant is made of silicone. It's a US-based company. They've been around for longer than we've all been around, and it's an incredibly safe product. Sometimes people think silicone, like breast implant silicone, totally different. It's a solid silicone implant that's been used for a really long time. Okay. After surgery, you'll have a wrap dressing in place. You'll stay overnight with us at the surgery center. You'll have 2 nurses caring for you after surgery.
Does he need to be there?
You don't need to be there, but yeah, you'll come by and pick her up the following morning. Okay. Questions for me?